Hello, Purple Cult. Welcome to another episode of the Purple Sessions. In this show, I interview fascinating people about all things creativity and mental health. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Anastasia Elliot, and I'm an independent alternative rock artist with an insane passion for trauma and mental health and wellness and healing PTSD. After my plane crash, I became really obsessed with how art can heal you, and today's guest is a perfect example of somebody that's really using their art to heal parts of themselves. Today I'm interviewing Dusty Gannon. He is the lead singer and guitarist for goth pop band Vision Video. They're based in Athens, Georgia, and they're one of my favorite music discoveries of this year. They describe their music as dance music for the end of times, and I love that because the music really is kind of fun and it makes you want to dance, but the lyrics deal with all kinds of topics relating to mental health and trauma. Dusty is an insanely interesting person. He served in the army in Afghanistan and then became a firefighter, and by night is this really awesome glam rock goth. He's so cool. He wears the coolest makeup. I told him I really needed a makeup lesson from him. He just has the coolest outfits. You may also know him from his TikTok personality, Goth Dad. He created this band as a way to help him heal and is inspired to write music for people to know that sometimes it's okay to not always be okay. I hope you enjoyed today's conversation, and if you don't already, please hit the subscribe button and like. We have so many cool conversations coming up with some awesome people, and if there's anyone that you would love to see me interview, drop them in the comments. I wanted to kind of start with you introducing who you are and just maybe a little bit about your band and just in your own words before I, bio you up.
Sure, yeah. So my name is Dusty Gannon. I'm probably known to most people as, I guess, Goth Dad, but a lot of people know me through Vision Video, which is the band that I perform with. And I guess I've become known through those things in the past year, especially. Our band put out our first debut LP last year, almost exactly a year ago, actually. And thanks. And the Goth Dad stuff through TikTok and Instagram has just kind of grown and grown and grown. And it's never something that I really fully anticipated to be much of a thing at all, but it's something that's taken on a life of its own, and it's a lot of fun.
That's awesome. I don't think the stuff that grows is ever the stuff that you anticipate.
Yeah, definitely
want to grow.
Right. Yeah, I mean, it's definitely, I see the appeal of it and I get it now, but when it first started to kind of build very fast, very quickly, I mean, I was like, man, I just thought it was kind of a silly joke, but a lot of people immediately were like, oh my God, this is amazing. And I have a bit more of a comprehension of it now than I did before. But at first I was kind of just blown away.
Yeah, Derek, my boyfriend, and I just joined TikTok fairly recently, and it just feels like the wild, wild west. But Derek and I just had a video go viral at 2.4 million views now. And
nice.
It was just the dumbest little video where he sighed, and then I copied him and I wrote something about relationships, and it just went off. And it was crazy because anything I have posted that's more music directed or something that's really heart-centered to me is way harder to catch on. But the dumb little stuff is what people really like.
Oh yeah. It's never going to be the things that you think will help, get your art out there. But I mean, I think that, I look at it as cooperation now. You have to kind of do the silly stuff or the stuff that's maybe not even necessarily silly, but just stuff that's not normally in your purview to bring attention to what you really care about. And, for me, that's music as well. But I try to do it in a way that sort of meshes goth dad and TikTok stuff to the music in a sort of indirect way. It's not always like
fun with social media, or is it kind of a burnout thing for you? Because I know social media culture, especially with just how many places you have to be visible and like how much you post, like it can be a little overwhelming. So is it something that you like really enjoy and feel creative with, or is it something that can be like, oh God, I'm gonna do that today? Or are you a batcher, or do you post like, do you do your content like kind of every day? Like what's your process?
So I mean, I guess to whatever effect, like last year I was doing it a lot as the record came out, and I was constantly posting stuff just every single day. I was like posting at least one, if not more, pieces of content like almost every single day. And I think that's not really like tenable. I think you kind of like lose the forest for the trees sometimes when you're doing that, because like stuff that you're putting out there is just not that great. I mean, it's just simply is just like you're just trying to flick the algorithm or whatever. And I've kind of gotten away from that to a degree. I've slowed down a lot. And I mean, to be completely honest, like touring and getting back into sort of we're releasing another record this year in the fall, and getting all of the business stuff ready, because we're totally independent. We run our own everything, and getting everything ready to do another record properly and release it properly is a lot of work. And I just like simply don't have time between the fire department and practicing music, performing music, and then getting all the business stuff ready. So yeah, I mean, I think there was a while where I felt a little like burnout, and I kind of stepped away from it for a while, and now I'm kind of getting a little bit more back into it, as far as like consistently getting stuff out there and just like making time. But I mean, it's all about like, ultimately it, like the way I view it is like, it is part of your job. If you want to be successful in the entertainment industry, whether you're an actor or a musician or whatever you are, any kind of art, it is like, for better or for worse, it's part of the job now to like spend time making stuff to promote yourself. So, and I guess like for me, that's not inherent to my nature. Like I'm very extroverted and I like communicating and meeting people and talking a lot, but I'm not very good at being like, look at me, like I'm great, because I have very deeply rooted beliefs that are in my head that tell me contrary all the time. But I think the one thing that's really helped me remain resilient with stuff is like keeping in mind like what this is all about. I mean, I think for me, this is, like our music through Vision Video and everything that I write through that band is about me processing a lot of really intense trauma from my time in the military, and especially now as a firefighter and paramedic in the past 5 years of my life. And just like being able to connect with people over that kind of stuff, that's like what it's all about. So if I have to like, do some sort of horse and pony stuff, then I'm going to do it, because it's like it is my calling in life to be able to connect with people over art. And if that's going to be how I sustain myself through doing that, then that sort of reinvigorates a lot of my purpose. But to answer your second part of the question, like, yeah, I typically will make a bunch of stuff at once and then I just like burst it out. I mean, obviously, like, I think it's, again, I think untenable is the best word for it. If you're trying to do stuff every single day, it just becomes like unreasonable to maintain that expectation of yourself that you're just going to be able to like push stuff out. And I did it for a long time, and it was fun for a while. It's fun when it works, and it's fun when you gain positive feedback from gaining followers or just like interaction or whatever the case may be. But yeah, I mean, I think especially in this day and age, we've got to be like really cognizant that as entertainers who are suddenly expected to do our own sort of like PR and marketing and advertising, you're a human being and you're only one person and you only have so much time in the day. Um, so I try not to beat myself up too much about it anymore. I went through a period of time where I was like kind of upset about it, and I was just like, I don't know. It's like, I guess it just requires you to put a mirror in front of yourself and like reflect, like, is this how I want to live my life in order to like, do the means justify the ends or whatever? So
Yeah, you mentioned like just how many things you have to do when you're an independent artist, and I don't think people talk about that enough, because especially nowadays, and all, keeping up with the socials and learning how to run your ads properly, and working on press and trying to get radio if you're going that way, and booking shows and rehearsals, and if you have a full-time job on top of that, it's really hard. It's really
yeah,
hard to stay mentally strong through that, I think, especially when you're starting out. And, it's not always easy to get that positive feedback and to get things to spread. And, it's a process.
yeah.
And I think it's, how has your experience been being an independent, and like, do you want to stay that way? Like, do you enjoy it? Do you kind of divvy up responsibilities with the rest of your band, or are you kind of the one heading it all?
Um, so as far as the band's concerned, I mean, I pretty much do a majority of the stuff just because like it is sort of my baby, for lack of a better term. Even though everybody in the band is like, we're a literal business. We're like Vision Video LLC, and everybody in the band owns 25%. And it's pretty evenly distributed. I mean, we're not like making any substantial money yet, but hopefully that'll change one day to where we're. I'm basically, this year I'm going to be leaving the fire department to do this full time, and I've saved a lot of money, but I've, it's still not at the point where I'm like sustaining myself off of this. But that being said, like, yeah, I mean, I think with every band or any group creative project or whatever, you're always going to have like one or two people that do the preponderance of the work. And it's pretty, I don't know, like you can get really resentful about that stuff, or you can just like suck it up and kind of do it, because if you're not going to do it, then nobody is. Like our original bass player, Dan, and I basically run the administrative stuff for the band. Like we'd handle all the kind of business end, and we have like a sort of an overarching manager who's also named Dan, if you can imagine how confusing that gets. But he
I've
helps
actually
us.
had a lot of Dans in my own career as well. Like that's
Okay.
been a pretty common name that I've
I
been
guess,
like,
yeah.
I have so many Dans.
I guess it's just like musicians and Dans, but like manager Dan, as I refer to him, he's kind of big picture conceptual stuff, and we sort of pay him on a project basis. Like if we were trying to get something that he can help us with, we'll kind of pay him a la carte, so to speak, to tackle a project. So he's kind of in and out. He's a little more transient, but yeah, we handle all the day to day. And I mean, I write most of the music as far as the sort of skeletal structure and the lyrics and stuff like that. It mostly comes from me. But Emily helps with that a bit. And then everybody brings in their incredible abilities as musicians to kind of fill in the gaps where obviously I can't. I mean, I'm never going to be a drummer. I'm never going to be a keyboard player, at least insofar as good as Emily and Jason are. But so yeah, there that stuff kind of gets burst out to a degree. But yeah, I mean, I think as far as staying independent, I mean, that's the intention, unless some label comes in and is like, here's life-changing money to keep doing what you're doing. But I think those days are like pretty rare. Like those instances are pretty rare these days. And I mean, to some effect, you have to wonder at like what cost does that come? Because you can't, I mean, as an independent artist, you can build your project to a place where it is feasible to be to sustain yourself. It just takes a ton of work, and I think I'm a bit of a realist when it comes to like how I talk about this stuff, because I like to be optimistic. I think I'm an optimist overall in a lot of ways. But I also tell people, I'm like, the amount of work that it takes to get to even where we are with like finances and sustainment is like borderline unpalatable for most people. Like they would look at the amount of stuff that I do at a weekly basis and go, absolutely not. There's no way.
Being an artist is not for the faint of heart, especially if you're running your own stuff and you have an aesthetic. Like there's a difference between being an artist that's creating an aesthetic and creating a brand and creating projects that have really deep meaning, and somebody that's more of like, you know, a singer-songwriter just kind of throwing stuff up. Like there's a huge difference, I think, in the amount of work that it takes.
Oh yeah, I mean it's a lot. It's crazy.
I'm like, if most people looked at my schedule for the week, they would be like, oh no. And just the amount of skills you have to continuously learn, and not only learn but get good at quickly. Right. Like, I mean, I'm sure in this past year of doing your stuff, you've gained probably many skills that you never thought you would need, and have become proficient at them pretty quickly.
Oh yeah. I mean, like the amount of video editing that I've done in the past 2 years is just like wild. Like we shot our first 2 music videos and I edited them as well. And, you know, that was just something that I was like, it had never crossed my mind that like, oh, this is a thing that you're going to have to do. But yeah, I mean, you become a jack of all trades and a master of none in a lot of ways.
I guess I've been saying that a lot lately, where I'm like, I need to bring on some help, because I feel right now like I'm doing a lot of jobs good enough, but I'm not, you know, mastering the few that I really want to be.
Right. And I mean, there's a time and a place like for bringing in outside help to really nail something. You know, like I think for us, like right now, for example, going into the next record, like we'll be shooting a bunch of music videos this summer. This is like spring and summer. And, you know, that's just something that like at this juncture, I'm no longer really interested in like basically doing that myself, because it's just like so much work. And it's something that I feel we've kind of hit our ceiling with the ability for us to make something like better and further on. So, you know, but like whether it's a photographer coming in to do a shoot or hiring artists to make like, you know, record cover or a single artwork or whatever, those, you know, that it's, I think you have to be like really strategic about when and where you sort of put your money where your mouth is, because sometimes like for example, we're releasing a cover of Pictures of You by The Cure in like 8 days, and that single cover that's going to be online, it's literally like we just took a bunch of pictures that Emily had taken with like disposable cameras from the first tour, and I just made like a collage with them, and then like some photo booth strips, and then just like laid over some text. It's nothing fancy, but it's like meaningful, and it achieves the point of, you know, the artwork, I guess. But when we start to, that's like a standalone single that's not coming out with a record. But when we start to release standalone or non-standalone singles, like the singles that are going to be on the record, we'll be transitioning back to an artist who's going to be like creating the artwork. And I think that's just more impactful. But yeah, I mean, money is a huge factor to everything you do when you're out, when you're, pulling in somebody from the outside.
And a lot of people overpromise and underdeliver. You gotta be real careful with those spends.
Yeah. I mean, it's really tough to put money down and you're kind of risking it a lot of the time, especially when it's something that's like artistically inclined, like art or a cover art or a music video or whatever. You just don't really know what you're going to get until it's kind of done. And then you're like, all right, well, here's this final product. And sometimes it's like, we've never had a bad experience, but like one time when we shot Static Drone, the first edit that came back, we were like, this isn't it. Like, it was like really sterile and just sort of like, it just wasn't us. And it wasn't their fault, but it's just like, you just don't know. Sometimes people sort of misinterpret their own lens of what they think that you want. And then you have to kind of work through that. And, so that's just like that's another part of it though, is just like learning to work and collaborate with people, so that they can see your vision and try to get it a little bit more tighter to what your lens is showing you.
Yeah, absolutely. So you kind of quickly glossed over this as if being an artist wasn't hard enough. You were in the Army for some time in Afghanistan and then returned to Georgia to become a firefighter and paramedic. I can only imagine the fair share of PTSD that you must face. And I've been a fan of your guys' music for like months since I found you, and I didn't know your full story until I started doing research for our interview. And I just got even more excited to talk to you because trauma and PTSD is like so close to my heart, because my album's based off my plane crash and toxic relationships that I've been in, and kind of the concepts of light and darkness and death and resurrection that we go through in our lives. And when reading about, what your lyrics are about and, how you weave in trauma processing into your work, I was just like, yay, a trauma music buddy.
Oh yeah.
So how is dealing with that trauma and, depression and things that come from all the things you've been through, how does that inform your art? And is it something that really inspires you? And does it kind of, for me, creating art with those experiences kind of makes me feel like they were worth going through. Like it kind of gives them that really solid purpose to be like, I made something beautiful out of this really terrible thing that has kind of messed me up, but here I can share this experience and create this art and hopefully reach people. Like, does it feel like that to you?
Yeah, to some effect. I mean, I think a lot of the stuff that I've been through and seen and done is more, I don't know that it makes it worth it. And I think that that's to everybody's own internal journey with trauma and post-traumatic stress and stuff like that. If I could, there's a lot of things that if I could just go back and not do or see, I would just very gladly choose that.
That's actually going to be a question. From me to you is if you could go back, would you change the things that you've been through?
I mean, I guess in a hypothetical, because no amount of art or commiserate experience with other people is gonna like remove that. But that's a hypothetical, and it's the reality is that it is there and it will always be there. So more importantly, I think for me is that like I do have this outlet, this cathartic experience now that I do get to share with a lot of people, and it's beautiful in its own way. And I mean, I certainly think that if I didn't have the experience of kind of projecting the music and like having that relationship with our fan base, and being able to talk to people regularly, yourself included. I mean, it's, I mean, like, not to be so like super morbid, but like I wouldn't be alive, because it was something that, being around death so constantly for the past like X amount of years of my life, I mean, it really is not, if you're like a person that already deals with like existential dread, or just like a lot of, if you're somebody that's very like analytical and like thinks about the nature of things, it's not very good for you. And I think, very clearly, like it helped me center myself and gain some sense of purpose, insofar as, having people come up to me and say like, hey, this song or your record or your music in general, whatever, has really helped me get through XYZ. Like there was one time I was in, it was Memphis, and I can't remember the woman's name because my brain is Swiss cheese, but we were playing our last show of the tour in September to October. And this woman came up to me, and I was just kind of like how I look now. I wasn't in on any of the makeup or anything. And she was like, hey, I don't want to bother you. I was just wondering if I could talk to you about your music real quick. And I was like, yeah, of course, just I'm just hanging out, just having a beer and about to get ready. And she basically told me a story about her brother who was in Iraq, and he came home with like really severe PTSD, and he ended up taking his own life because he could not find a way through it. And she basically said to me like, listening to your music helps me understand him in a way that I never thought possible. Yeah, and that's, so things like that have happened, that have just like really shaken me to my core in a good way. And I try not to ever take that for granted, because I think like one of the things I've been thinking a lot about, before I kind of came to a lot of these realizations, was like, why spend all this time and money and energy and effort into making music? If you want to go party and drink and like do crazy shit, you can do that anytime in any major city. It's always there, but if you, I guess my point is like, if you're trying to do all this stuff for like fame or money or partying or whatever, it's like super hollow, and it's just not, I don't know. It's just a really like pathetic reason to be like, I want to be an entertainer. And it just makes me question, like, I don't know, when I there's a lot of like artists who I'm like, I don't know them, so I can't like have an opinion about their lives, but it just makes me wonder, like, when the music is so frivolous, and I'm just like, anyway, it doesn't matter. But
I feel you. I feel you. I think there's purpose to the frivolity. People like that, detachment and that reason to escape. But that's definitely not the art that makes me happy to create. And
right.
I don't think I'll ever find myself in that place. I've definitely been asked to create art like that, but then I usually know those people are not my people.
Yeah. It's, I mean, and you're right. It's, there's something to be said about just like music that just sounds good for the sake of music, or, doesn't, like, not everything has to be this like deep message laden thing. Some of my favorite movies that I watch like very regularly are like truly horrible, just like shitty horror movies from the 80s that have like no deep meaning. But yeah, I guess my contemplation is more of like the purpose of it, and like why people are so hell-bent on doing stuff. But yeah, and that was something that I had to kind of really solidify in my mind was like, why are you doing this? Like, why spend all this time? Why risk, my career at the fire department's really good. Like I'm a very good firefighter. I'm a great medic. I love what I do, but ultimately, like, I'm gonna have to choose one of these, and that's coming very soon. I mean, that's definitely gonna happen this summer. So you take a lot of risks in a very, very competitive industry where there are no guarantees and there's no stability whatsoever. But I mean, I think that I don't know. I think that like taking risks, calculated risks, but risks no less, is like super important. Like
that's what I was just about to ask you, from being in the Army to then being a firefighter and paramedic and being an artist. It seems like you were really drawn to high stakes lifestyle. How is that for you? Like, do you have a hard time when things are more chill or they don't feel high stakes? Like, does that bring you anxiety? Like, are you comfortable in the more, chaotic uncertainty?
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, that's like one of the major manifestations of my trauma is that like I don't, when things are like fine, I'm like just anxious as all hell because I am constantly waiting for shit to hit the fan. And
that's very common amongst veterans. I mean, the ones that I know, and I was in a relationship with one, and he definitely struggled with not being able to be comfortable when things were okay. I think just people that have been through horrific traumas in general kind of struggle when things are fine to believe that they can stay that way and to stop looking over their shoulder. It's a challenging thing to deal with.
Well, and for me, it's always been it's not necessarily that, like, obviously I love being like calm and chill, and I like that's my preferred state of things, is to be like not like, I guess carefree or worry free or anxiety free. But the way that, my mind works, because of all the myriad things that I've been privy to, is that like, I'll be like real chill, off work, on vacation, drinking a beer, on the beach, and then I'm all of a sudden stuck in, a flashback, or I'll see something in my mind from something previously, and then I'm stuck thinking about that, and it just pulls me back from this calm, serene stability back into those moments, and that's really hard. I've been dealing with that a lot lately, actually. Just very intrusive thoughts, like constantly. So being back around craziness is like, oh, okay, well, here's this new thing, and I can focus on this. Like, like I was working the ambulance yesterday, and we had like nothing super insane, but like one like relatively serious call, and I was like, all right, like, and I was like laser focused, and it's like, oh, this is my purpose. Like, I'm good at this. And
do you think you're gonna miss it?
Oh, 100%. I mean, definitely. But that was one of the things that I realized for myself, was just like, when does it become enough? Like, I don't know if that makes sense, but like, I've been out doing this stuff for 5 years, and there's no more like real sort of like, I guess the term would be like morbid curiosity about what like this would look like, or what's it like when this happens. Because I mean, the job will humble you. Like, just when you think you've seen it all, you'll see some other stuff that's like, holy shit, like I didn't even know this was like possible. But I've run, whenever I'm on the ambulance, there's just, it seems like all hell tends to break loose. I don't know why. We're like, firefighters and medics are superstitious people, and we call people like me a black cloud. And the amount of like completely insane calls that I've run, that like people, like I'll tell like 20-year veterans.
Can you share one of your craziest?
I mean, like, I don't know if I would want to really go into.
You don't have to.
I mean, just like, I mean, I've been on like active shooter scenes where like this guy shot up this dude, and it was in like a factory, and we were like, he was still there, and we had to like go in with SWAT. And that was crazy because like I was going into army mode, and I was like, I don't have a weapon. Like, I'm just here. And, so that was crazy. And that, and I don't really know like to what effect I can talk about some of the stuff because of HIPAA stuff. Yeah. But I mean, needless to say, like, people being lit on fire, intense dismemberment, just.
Do you see worse stuff being with the fire department or being a paramedic?
Well, so we're both. Like I spend one shift on the fire engine, and then the next shift on the ambulance. So we just sort of go back and forth because that's like typically what most fire departments do now. Because like fires are not, you don't run a fire every day. They're pretty rare actually. But we do 99% of what we do is medical. Wow. So you end up being mostly a paramedic, but yeah.
What's the process of like, if you're writing about those experiences and kind of processing through your writing, do you have kind of like a specific situation you're going for, or do you kind of start with music and then feel kind of the mood of what that's bringing out of you? And
I as a rule, kind of, I always start writing music first because I do believe that like if the music itself sonically does not sound good, it doesn't matter how beautiful or eloquent or like awesome the lyrics are, that message is never going to get through because people are going to go, oh, nope, I'm done with that song. Like, so I kind of just, I always start with, when I go into like a writing cycle, I will write, riffs, like guitar riffs, and then I'll just sort of like build a simple structure of a song. And then, typically what I'll do is I'll just kind of sit down with like my iPad, and I'll just write like sort of like stream of consciousness, just like writing. I'll think about something, that I've been through, or like an emotion or a concept that I want to explore. A lot of it's like very random for my brain, like something will just kind of pop into my head, and I'm like, oh, okay, like that's something like a literal line of lyrics or a concept or something will pop in, and I'm like, okay, and I'll write it down, and I might like put it down for a couple days and come back and be more intentional about it. But eventually I'll have like this just giant page of mostly nonsense, and then I just start kind of culling the chafe and just like getting it down to refining it, and sort of, I liken it to like chiseling marble to make a statue. You're just like getting rid of all this excess, and then you end up with like what makes the best of it really great, and then even refining it further, and just trying to make it like, once you have like a good concept, or once you have like a message or something, any kind of thing like that, just sort of making it like phonetically pleasing to like, certain words just sound better together, that say the same things as other words, as far as their meanings, but just making the changes of words to be more phonetically and sonically pleasing. And that's kind of my writing process. And I take all that and I bring it to the band, and I go, here you go. Like, what do you think of this? And they sort of fill in the gaps, fill in the blanks, so to speak.
Nice. So y'all formed like right before the pandemic. What was that like, releasing music during the pandemic? Like, was that, I mean, I guess you didn't have any previous experience releasing without it, but
Yeah.
not being able to tour or play shows.
Yeah. I mean, I guess for me, it was a little different insofar as expectations, because I kind of called it from the beginning. I was like, all right, this pandemic is going to last a long time. I was like, we're not going to have any sense of normalcy until there's a vaccine. And I figured that was going to be anywhere from a year to a year and a half minimum. So, we had recorded our record in 2019, and we were getting ready to release like In My Side as a single. And we were kind of like aiming at the summertime, and then the pandemic hit, and I was like, this is probably actually a really good time to release something, because everybody's just like wanting something new, and everything was shut down, like all industry, everything. So I was like, all right, let's just put this song out now, and we'll see how it does. And it did pretty well. It wasn't like crazy, I put a lot of money into marketing and advertising, and that helped a bit, but it wasn't crazy. But then, I started getting on TikTok and Instagram like very aggressively. And that was the big thing, honestly, for us, was just like building a community of people who liked the music through regular content. But then we also, and we're going to start doing this again. We haven't done it in a while just because we've been so busy, but we would get on Twitch like every single week, and we did this thing called Vision Video Karaoke. And it was basically like, we would have, like, in our chat, we would have requests, and Emily and I would like sing karaoke songs, like whatever. Yeah. And it was just cool. Like we just drink and like hang out with people and shoot the shit. And it was just like a really fun way to get to know, who your fans are and what they like, and for them to get to know you in a really cool way. So we just did that all the time. And especially 2020 was just very bizarre for me, because like before the vaccines came out, like I did not go out or see people like much at all, because I was so constantly exposed to COVID that I was like, I'm just like a vector, basically. Like I don't, and I just like terrified of like killing somebody's grandma, because one of the patients that I ran the day prior gave it to me, and then I gave it to whoever at a bar, and then they give it, So I just sort of became purposefully reclusive that year, as most people did, I feel. But I just use that energy that is normally sort of extroverted for me, and I took that frustration and sort of lack of that part of my life, and I just said, all right, you're going to throw every ounce of this energy on this thing that you believe in, because I did believe in it, like basically when we were writing that record in 2018, when it was like really coming together, and then into 2019, that's when I had this kind of really big mental health meltdown. I was going through this like really hard time where I was seeing a lot of really bad stuff at the fire department, and like just dealing like with stress from Afghanistan that I didn't even think was that big of a deal, but it was definitely a big deal. And it, and I was like, I was basically done. I was like going to come home and do the final deed. And a friend called me and just like, stopped me from doing something, and they didn't even realize it. But, that was when I started to really look at the music as something that could help me process a lot of this stuff. And it did. So I just kind of decided in 2020, I was like, well, if this can do this for me, I'm willing to bet that it'll probably help somebody else too. And so I just kind of like, again, put my money where my mouth was. And I was like, this is this means something. And I think that if it helps just a handful of people, then like I will be fulfilled.
Yeah.
And then it just started catching on. I mean, and that was even before all the like goth dad stuff and all that, I mean, we had a pretty sizable followership before then. Um, those two things kind of help each other, but it was just cool watching it grow and to see like your labor of love into this thing like actually pay off.
Yeah, that's awesome. Where did the inspiration for your visual aesthetic come from? I mean, how did you get so good at makeup? And like, where did you learn that? What inspired your visual vibe? Because it's so cool and it's so unique. And yeah, when I saw you at South by Southwest, I was like, oh my gosh, it's amazing.
Thanks. Yeah, I appreciate that. So I grew up in rural Georgia, and when I was very young, I was and am still very much so, if you couldn't tell, very obsessed with horror movies. And I've always thought that they are like a really unique medium to sort of convey like really weird, chaotic, harmful things, but in like safe places. Like you can watch a horror movie and experience trauma, and it doesn't like affect you because it's a movie. But I always found a lot of amazing sort of beauty to the makeup, especially special effects makeup. So when I was a kid, when I was a teenager, I spent a lot of time learning makeup, if like special effects makeup mostly, but makeup in general, in order to build like sort of a portfolio I was working on when I was like 16, 17. And I had it in my mind, like I dropped out of high school and I was going to like move to California and like go just do that. But I ended up joining the Army instead because I was an idiot. But
very big difference.
Yeah, it's a big difference. But like, I never stopped doing
horror to real horror.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, totally. I guess I just never stopped working on that though. It was like on Halloween's, obviously every Halloween, every year I would do some really extravagant makeup or, and I've always been sort of into the goth subculture and the goth scene. So like when I was a teenager and even in my 20s, when I was in the military, like I would go out to goth nights, and I still do, not as much as like what I do now, but that was still very much so part of my life. And yeah, like when I came out of the military in 2016, I dated a girl who is like, she's like unbelievably good at makeup, and she kind of got me back into it because she just had this like absolutely exceptional collection of makeup and tools and stuff. And I was like, man, I forgot how much fun this stuff was. So Jessie is her name. She's great. She and I are like really good friends now, but she caught me, she sort of like was like, hey, you remember this? Like you haven't done this in a while, but like, and so I kind of picked her brain on a lot of more like conventional cosmetic stuff. And I learned a lot from her. And she taught me the biggest thing that helps me learn, which is just like YouTube tutorials. Like sit there with a mirror, put YouTube on, and do exactly what they do. And I'm a kinetic learner, so I learn by doing. So that was just like fantastic, for me to just be able to sit there and replicate stuff and catch on very quickly with that kind of thing. But then, like also in the pandemic, like that was part of and is still part of the content for us is like makeup stuff. It's just constantly trying different stuff. And, I haven't been pressing the envelope as much as I was like last year, but, it's stuff that I'll be getting back into very soon. Yeah, just like enjoying that process and I mean, a lot of I guess my inspirations for it, aside from horror films, are just like, I take a lot of cues from like early 80s goth subculture, but also like kind of late 70s punk rock makeup. Um, I really like sort of Batcave era, post punk culture. I think the people in that time were because that was before it was like goth. It was just whatever. It was like they didn't really have a name for it. And I think because of that, there were no sort of like confining boundaries, and they were just experimenting and doing like whatever. And if you look at that time of fashion and music and culture, it's like really fascinating because it's just like so over the top and eccentric. And uh, I really like that. But I also really like the sort of new romantic era in the 80s, with bands like Duran Duran, you know, that kind of androgynous stuff has always appealed to me, especially being bisexual and kind of always having been bisexual, whether I was out or not. Like that's always been something that was, part of my desired aesthetic, was like hyper androgyny. It's kind of, I think that's kind of like where most of my stuff comes from.
Nice. That's really cool. How long does it take you before a show to get ready?
It depends. Like,
I don't know.
yeah, I mean, like if we're on tour, you get really good at doing it fast and in like weird, uncomfortable places. Like I did my makeup so many times on this last tour we just got off of, in like broom closets and bars and stuff. I have like a little makeup box, like travel box, and it has like a mirror that like folds out. So
Bringing your
that helps.
mirror is definitely a must.
Yeah, you learn that pretty quick. You learn that very, very fast.
I didn't know that like on my first tour, and I was like with the little bitty mirrors that are like in the cosmetics things, like, oh my gosh, I can't see.
Yeah, it gets to be.
Or in the car.
Yeah, it's either one of those is a terrible choice, unfortunately. But I mean, it can take me anywhere from 45 minutes to an hour and a half, just depending on like how intricate and detailed. Like if it's kind of like a bigger show where there's a good green room and there's like time. The biggest thing is just like how much time do I have? Because I've had some shows where we showed up, like we played in like basically Harrisburg, and we showed up and it was like, all right, like literally went into an employee bathroom in this like kitchen. It was kind of a brew pub, and threw on everything, and then like came outside, set up the merch booth, and like just kind of caught the two opening acts, and then it was like, all right, go. So there's not a lot of margins when you're driving like 8 to 9 hours every day. I mean, if I have the time, like an hour and a half is pretty good for me, because then I have the time to like really meticulously do it. What's that?
To do something really cool and special.
Yeah. And just to think about it, like sometimes I just like throw something together and it's just like chaos, which sometimes that works really well too. Sometimes that's like a really good way of doing it. Not thinking too much and just sort of letting your skills and your knowledge sort of navigate and guide you.
Yeah, absolutely. Where did the name Vision Video come from?
So Vision Video is the name of this like much beloved video rental store that we had here in Athens. It started in like 1986, I think, 84 maybe, but it was around for a long time. They made it until 2017, and then they finally closed. And it was just one of those things, like in Athens is like kind of this weird town that's stuck in the middle of Georgia, and Georgia's like hyper conservative, aside from like a couple cities. But Athens has always been like a bizarre place. I grew up around here. There's there's like a really huge music scene. This is where REM and the B-52s are from. We have, you know, multiple really fantastic music venues here. And there's just like, I read at any given time, there's like 200 bands in operation out of Athens at any time, which is awesome for a city this small. But I remember growing up around here, and Vision Video was like the coolest. It was like the cool, locally owned, independent video store. And you would go in, and they had this awesome deal. It was called 5 for 5. You get 5 movies for 5 nights for $5.
Wow.
And yeah, it was great. And it was like, they had all the like weird cult stuff. So somebody like me, it was like heaven. It was like being in a library of just immense size, you know, and they had so many movies. And it was like one of those things that I just kind of miss. And I think is sort of, you know, I try not to like hyper romanticize nostalgia, because I think, you know, it's really easy to be like, oh man, like things used to be so great. It's like, no, things used to fucking suck too. You used to have to write checks for everything. Like that was terrible. I'm old enough to remember that shit. You know, like we didn't have cell phones. Like we didn't have instant access to everything all the time. And that's a really nice thing. But one of the things that I do miss is, and I don't know that a lot of people would enjoy this nowadays, and it's fine. It's just kind of like, it's maybe a generational thing, but I do miss sort of the intentionality of things. Like, you know, when you went out on a Friday night to Vision Video to go rent movies, you got your 5 movies, and like whatever you got, that's what you had for the weekend. And like sometimes those movies sucked. And it's like, you would sit there and watch them anyway, because it's like, well, there's no like, it's not like like Netflix where you can just like turn it off and be like, this movie's terrible, let me watch something else. But you end up finding like a lot of really cool things, like where you know, you'd watch the first 15 minutes and be like, this is terrible. But then like the second half of the movie is incredible, or, you know, I just think that there's like something that's missing in a lot of ways from our society, where we just we're so like used to immediacy that like we don't, I don't know, I guess we're like losing some of what could be really like amazing stuff for us, but we just like, I don't like it. It doesn't immediately please me.
So much noise nowadays, and so much. I think it's kind of been in the devaluation of art process. Like as you look at, you know, even things like Spotify, that's been like big talk lately. That, you know, and definitely just the devaluation of art. And
yeah,
I have spent this past 10 years working on this first album, this first project that I'm about to put out. And there's so much intentionality behind every tiny detail, because I wanted to create something that was really special, and that it was an experience, and it took time to create that. But I think nowadays things are just like, oh, I can finish this in my house, and I can upload it like that, and I can just like, you know, consume it so quickly. And you know, even a lot of producers, like there's kind of a thing where, you know, you need a hook in the first 7 seconds of your song to get somebody to listen or to put you on a playlist, and you know, things have to be like this and this and this. And there is a lot of that, you know, you could really love something, but just because it didn't, you know, fit the algorithms or whatever, it may not ever reach you.
Yeah, and that's
a lot more noise than there ever was.
Absolutely. And I think that's what keeps me also like really interested in subculture, is that like, it's really not, I don't know. I think, you know, if you listen to a lot of like goth music, a lot of it's like kind of rough and abrasive and raw. And the same with punk and like experimental electronic music, industrial EBM, not to be confused with EDM, but electronic body music. But you know, stuff like that. I think that's one of the reasons why I'm even in my elderly age still fascinated, and I still find like a lot of joy in a lot of bands that are putting out music in this world, because it's like, it's not for everybody, and it does require you to think a lot of the time. Some of it's not like super deep, A lot of it's just sort of a like repetitive replication of stuff that came before. But there's like so many artists in the post-punk world right now that are just like doing unbelievable stuff and like new stuff that I've never, never really considered. So yeah,
it's kind of the two sides of the coin. Like the accessibility has made it easier for people to get their stuff out and experiment, and they never would have had an opportunity in the old way of doing things.
Yeah,
it's also created so much noise.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's a good thing and a bad thing, I think.
Yeah.
Do you own a hearse? Do you tour in a hearse?
I wish we could tour in it, but I do own one. Her name's Charlene, and she's a 1990 Cadillac Brougham. I bought her from a retired mechanic out in Comer, Georgia, and she's in awesome shape. It's just like not really conducive to like going out on the road because she gets 14 miles per gallon.
I was gonna say, what's the miles per gallon on a hearse?
No, it's not good. But we use her to go to shows here locally. If we're gonna play in Athens, like I live like 5 minutes walking distance to downtown, so I mean it's super easy to get around in that thing, and it's kind of fun. But yeah, it's also only got 2 seats, so it's just like not something that would be conducive to touring in any way, shape, or form. But
do you have any fun pre-show rituals?
I guess my stuff's like pretty straightforward. I have 2 to 3 drinks, no more than that. That's kind of my upper limit. And then I'll throw on music and do my makeup, and I usually get kind of quiet pre-show. It's very, very chill. Like I just like to kind of just like focus on breathing and just kind of get myself warmed up. I always stretch because we run around a lot, and we're very like physical on stage, so it's kind of getting limbered up is a major part of not getting hurt, which can ruin a tour.
Yes.
So yeah, there's no like, there's nothing, I guess, bizarre that I do. You'd think there would be, but it's pretty tame.
My BioFreeze and my Theragun are my tour buddies.
Yeah.
All the, whiplash and those sore muscles that happen, or weird bruises that pop up that you're like, I'm not really sure how that one happened.
Yeah. Oh yeah. We've been home for like a week and a half, and I'm still very sore.
I'm sure.
Yeah. It's so weird. Like your body just knows when it's over. And like on that last day, we were driving back home, and I was sore in places, but that last day, it all hit me, and I was like, "Holy shit, man! Like I am."
It takes
not
some
okay.
time to recover from those shows. It takes some time for the body to be like, "All right, I'm friends."
Yeah. 30 days of touring is a lot too. So, I in fact, I'm going to a chiropractor in a little while here, so I can.
Chiropractor is necessary.
Yeah, definitely.
If you could play with, like, make your own lineup of 4 of your like goth heroes and for a show, what would be your dream lineup?
Well, definitely
alive or dead. Alive.
Okay, cool. I'd say definitely Robert Smith and The Cure would be one. Just because I think The Cure is like one of the most brilliant bands of the past 100 years. The Chameleons. I think Mark Burgess is like one of the most underrated musicians and songwriters ever. It's like criminal to me that The Cure did as well as they did and had the Chameleons as peers, but they just like didn't see as much success. But they're just insanely good. And then, 2 more. I would say something maybe a little different would be like I don't know. I mean, she's not really goth, but I would put her into that lineup would be Kate Bush.
Oh, yes.
For
One of my
sure.
favorite artists of all times.
Yeah.
One of my biggest, musical heroes.
Yeah.
I love that you just said that. I did not expect that answer.
I'm a huge Kate Bush fan. So I'd put her in there, and then something kind of wild card for me would be like maybe Skinny Puppy, because they're just like super theatrical, and I think that would make like a really fun bill.
That sounds like a great show.
Yeah, it'd be a really weird show.
It'd be fun as hell.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Right, I have 2 more questions for you.
Cool.
What would be your best piece of advice for somebody that's maybe dealing with depression or like a really tough time right now? Like what's in your mental health toolbox, and what would you tell them?
I think it depends on what exactly they were kind of going through. But for me, one of the biggest things that that helped me, dramatically improve my mental health was to stop looking at problems like depression or post-traumatic stress or trauma as like things to get through or to get over, because you don't ever do that. They don't go away. But you've got to learn how to live alongside it. And that's the hard part, because surviving things that actively can like literally make you not want to be alive, surviving that kind of stuff takes active work. It's not a passive thing. You're not just like gonna get better. Like, you're not gonna move to a different town or meet a girl or a guy or find whatever that's just gonna make it better. It's about talking to trained professionals. It's about taking an active interest in your life to do things that will make you feel better, like drinking less, working out a lot. For me, I work out every day because it keeps my brain like, there's something, the release of endorphins and like probably a little bit of dopamine from working out every day is just something that really helps me stay centered. And eating healthy, like I went into a vegetarian diet a year ago, and that made me feel a lot better. But these are all, none of these are catch-all things, and they're all part of a holistic, just like an overall approach of trying to get better. But the center piece, the cornerstone of that, is like talking to a trained professional, because if you're not doing that, none of the other stuff's really going to matter. But yeah, I mean, just learning to get along with these things instead of looking at them as things to get over or get through, because I think that antagonizes it in your brain, or at least it did for me.
Absolutely. And I love that answer. And it's really similar to the answer that I always give to that kind of question, because I think a lot of the mental health people that you can follow on socials, like it feels very much like something you can achieve, or like it's kind of this like shiny thing of like, here are the things to do to get better. And like getting better is kind of something that's always going to be on a sliding scale. Like it's never something that's like 100% there. So I think that that's a very powerful message to keep enforcing to people, is that it's not achievable. It's something that's always shifting and finding those things that work for you to kind of keep you on the good half of the scale when
definitely,
but to also not judge yourself and to be all right when you inevitably swing to the other side.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. Being gentle with yourself. It's like a big thing.
It's tough.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, my last question for you. I've been ending all my interviews with this one, and I love just getting the variety of answers. But if somebody gave you a box of everything that you had ever lost, what would you look for first?
Oh man, that's a great question. What would I look for first? I don't really, I guess it's kind of hard because I don't know that I am so attached to anything that I've ever lost.
It can be intangible thing too.
Okay. I guess like that feeling that you have when you're like maybe about like 11 or 12 years old, and it's like Halloween day, and you're still young enough to go out trick or treating, but you're like almost too old for it, and you kind of know, and you're like still super excited because it's like, you know, like like I think no, like when you're aware of the sort of exhaustible nature of that feeling, and that you're like aware that it's going to be something that'll be gone soon. I would look for that feeling again, because that was one of my favorite things in the world. Was like I'll never forget the last time that my best friend Gary and I in grade school, we went trick or treating. I think I was like maybe 12 or 13 actually, but we went out, and it was just like, you know, that cool, spooky, like wonderful Georgia fall air was just blowing, and it was, you know, it just feels like everything is before you, and time is kind of meaningless, and yeah, the innocence of that's a cool thing.
No,
Yeah.
that's a good one. That's a great answer.
Thanks.
Well, thank you so much for being here, and thank you
of course.
for watching and making it to the end with us.